According to Home Secretary Braverman, people who have chosen life on the streets as a lifestyle will soon no longer be allowed to pitch their tents on main roads, as she said. A legislative initiative is to be announced at the King's Speech. And Britain's Home Secretary Sir Braverman wants to take action against the growing number of homeless tents in British city centres. The Conservative politician, I would call it extreme right-winger, announced this on Saturday via X, that was once Twitter. It's not about people who are really homeless, but about people who often come from abroad and have chosen life on the streets as a lifestyle, she emphasized. We cannot allow our streets to be taken over by rows of tents, said Braverman. Or now it's foreigners that want to live in tents. According to a report in the Financial Times, to which Braverman's post referred, the distribution of tents by aid organizations will in future be punishable as an administrative offense if they are used to disrupt public order. And what they mean by this we know since the demonstrations. Setting up in front of a shop entrance was given as an example. A corresponding legislative initiative should therefore be officially announced at the King's Speech. As I said, that's the reading of the government declaration by King Charles III, scheduled for the day when I'm filming this. No one in Britain should have to live in tents on the streets, Braverman stressed. There were options for people who did not want to sleep on the streets, and the government would be working with local authorities to strengthen comprehensive support. But if the pitching of tents is not stopped, there would be a risk of a development like that in the US cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles, where weak politics have led to an explosion of crime, drug abuse, and misery, as Braverman warned. And according to insiders, Braverman plans to crack down on tents that are a nuisance in urban areas such as main streets. According to the government, the growing number of homeless people is being followed by an increase in antisocial behavior, as The Guardian reports. But of course, Braverman received criticism from the deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner. The politician said on X, "Rough sleeping is not a lifestyle choice. A toxic mix of rising tents and the failure to stop no-fault evictions is hitting vulnerable people. After years of delay, the Tories are failing to deliver on their promises. Now, after 13 years, they are blaming the homeless and not themselves," Rayner wrote. According to the British Guardian, the latest annual figures show that 157,640 families were homeless in 22-23. And in March 23, 104,000 families were accommodated in emergency accommodation. The Office for National Statistics estimated that 3,069 people slept on the streets every night last year. That's a 26% increase on the previous year, according to The Guardian. Homelessness is a significant issue in the UK, with a growing number of people living on the streets or in temporary accommodation. While there is no definitive figure for the numbers of people living in tents, a 22 report by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation estimated that there were over 32,000 people sleeping rough in England on any given night. And the figure is likely to have increased in recent years due to the rising cost of living and the COVID-19 pandemic. The exact number of people living in tents, as I said, is difficult to quantify, as many people move between different types of temporary accommodation, including tents, shelters, and cars. However, a 23 survey by the charity St Mungo's found that 17% of rough sleepers in London were living in tents. And this suggests that there could be several thousand people living in tents in the UK at any given time. And there are a number of reasons why homelessness is a problem in the UK. And some of the most common causes include, for example, a lack of affordable housing. The cost of housing has been rising in the UK for many years, and this has made it increasingly difficult for people to afford to rent or buy a home. And this is particularly true in cities like London, where the average cost of a one-bedroom flat is now over £2,000 per month. Yeah, it's crazy. And there's poverty and unemployment. Many people who are homeless are also living in poverty or are unemployed. And this can make it difficult for them to afford rent, food, and other essential expenses. And sometimes there are mental health problems. People with mental health problems are more likely to experience homelessness. This is because they may be less able to manage their finances or even their living arrangements. And they may also be more likely to experience discrimination and social inclusion. But there's also domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is a major cause of homelessness, particularly for women and children. Women who are fleeing domestic violence may not have anywhere safe to go, and they may also be financially dependent on their abuser. And of course, there are addictions. People who are addicted to drugs or alcohol are also more likely to experience homelessness. This is because addiction can lead to problems with employment, relationship, and finances. The UK government has allegedly taken some steps to address the issue of homelessness, but seriously, more needs to be done. Homelessness in the UK has increased significantly since the Conservative Party came to power in 2010. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the number of people sleeping rough in England has more than doubled since 2010, while the number of people living in temporary accommodation has increased by over 60%. And there are a number of factors that have contributed to this rise. One was cuts to welfare benefits. The government has indeed made a number of cuts to welfare benefits, including housing benefit and universal credit. And these cuts have made it harder for people to afford to rent or buy a home and have pushed more people into homelessness. And there is a shortage of affordable housing. The government has built fewer affordable homes than previous governments, and this has made it harder for people to find affordable accommodation and has pushed more people into homelessness. And of course, we have the increase in the cost of living. The cost of living has risen significantly in recent years due to factors such as rising energy prices and food prices. And this has made it harder for people to afford to make ends meet and has pushed more people into homelessness. As I said, the government has allegedly taken some steps to address the issue of homelessness, such as launching the Rough Sleeping Support Service and the Homelessness Reduction Act. However, these measures have not been enough to reverse the trend of rising homelessness. And there are a number of things that could be done to reduce homelessness in the UK. For example, reversing cuts to welfare benefits. This would make it easier for people to afford to rent or buy a home and would help them to prevent people from falling into homelessness. And they could be building more affordable housing. This would make it easier for people to find affordable accommodation and would help to reduce the number of people living in temporary accommodation. And of course, introducing rent controls. This would help to control the cost of rent and would make it easier for people to afford to rent a home. And of course, they could provide more support for people with mental health problems. This would help people with mental health problems to manage their finances and their living arrangements and would help to prevent them from falling into homelessness as well. So it's a big topic. It's something that appears everywhere. It's always the extent that is different. And the UK does have a problem there. But just making an offense to sleep in a tent will not help anything against the cause of the whole situation. But it's nice and populist to do so, especially when you phrase it like Braverman, when you make it sound like those people in tents, they are not British, they are foreigners that want to live in tents. As if she's quoting Gaddafi here in this weird ways of traveling. Don't fall for populism like this, seriously. And if you want to know something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.